Today we are talking about hospitality to priests. How do we take care of the good pastors and priests in our lives? Talk to you in a minute here on Elevate Ordinary. Hello, it is 2022. I think we put out a couple episodes before this, but they weren't recorded in 2022. This one is. It is a new year here on Elevate Ordinary, where we have extraordinary conversations about the ordinary pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. Teresa, how you doing?
Good. It's 9 a.m. and I'm
Bright
really,
and early.
This
is good. This is good. We're starting it.
I didn't
We're
have
going to
enough
record
coffee.
these in the morning, the new year. We're going to be more peppy.
Yeah,
more
because I'm really, really pregnant,
Yes.
and towards the end of the afternoon, I'm just useless.
We're on the home stretch, but we're trying to get some episodes in because
Pray for
we've
me.
got a lot to talk
please.
about. So, hey, we hope that you guys are having a good new year. I want to remind you, as always, that if you like these conversations, you're going to be part of this conversation about seeking holiness and following our Lord Jesus in the day-to-day life, family, work, routines, schedules, all that stuff. Finding the virtue, finding the Holy Spirit in those times. Hey, join the Manor at St. Anne's. That's our community here around this show. If you want to be a patron of that, check out elevateordinary.com. But most of all, just thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of this conversation. Oh, and download the app at theawakenapp.io. That's where you can get access to that community. So, Teresa, we've been wanting to have this conversation for a long time.
No, I think this was one of our first episode ideas.
You get this in your head. You get a topic that you like, and then you put it off because you're afraid we're not going to do it right.
I've been putting off Elevate postpartum for a really long time. We can
do topics more than once. You know that. It'll take a couple runs. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm so type A.
That's part of life, right?
Perfect.
You can't wait until you're ready, and that's something we talk about a lot on this episode. You can't wait around until you're ready because you're never going to be ready. You have to practice it. You have to practice the virtues you're going to need to be ready. So we'll take a stab at hospitality to priests, and we'll check back in here next year. Maybe we'll have to do an updated episode once we've learned some more and kept experimenting with it, right?
Yeah, so I reached out to a bunch of priests in our diocese.
Yeah.
I tried to make sure that I got a decent representation from both introvert and extrovert priests.
That's an important one.
Yeah, I realized that I give hospitality as an extrovert.
Why don't you love me? Come have dinner with me more.
No, that's exactly the opposite of what we're going to talk about.
That's what we're going to tell them to do? Oh, okay.
No. So I've got this amazing feedback from amazing pastors in our diocese.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this, we're going to break this up into some practical areas based on their responses, things like dinner invitations, gifts, food.
I'm going to talk about some man stuff.
Yeah.
Fraternity.
Yeah. So we have a lot of practical advice, but as always, we want to frame it within a context.
A lot of advice in general. Some of it might even be good. So we'll see.
So one of the reasons why, priests are really dear to my heart. And as I've kind of discerned this over the course of my conversion life, I've noticed that even through my childhood, up through my college life, I have always had a deep love of mentor males. I don't know how else to describe it. I love, I'm a historian. I love Abraham Lincoln. He were my grandfather. I have these, I don't see black and white a lot of times with mentor males. I see the gray. I love them. I love helping imperfections, or I don't know. It is something that was present through my whole life. And then once I had my conversion, I recognized in my prayer life, a deep love for priests and a deep desire to pray and to sacrifice for priests well before, I got married and began offering hospitality in the ways that we're going to talk about to priests. But I have a particular love for John Paul II. I mean, I think everybody does. But I had this epiphany a few years ago, actually when I was watching our priest vicar preach. And I used to think like it was so nice for John Paul II to like spend time with young people, spend time with marrieds and, engaged couples and young families. And, it was so nice that he poured into them. But then as I kind of lived my own married life and had interactions with my pastors, had, priests over and developed like acquaintanceship. I don't want to use the term friendships because that can be a trigger word for priests, FYI. But just, developing personal relationships in our family with priests, realizing that, like, I think that it was, he must have recognized, John Paul II must have recognized that he was being fed by the humanity of the laity, by the humanity of families, and because he's a man first, right? He's a man first, before he's a priest. And that, deeply immersing himself in humanity and family life made him a better pastor. It made him a better man. And it was really then that I started to realize that, like, now I'm speaking as a lay person in my lay observations. Okay. And I know that I'm just going to say what I feel and what I observe. Okay. It does sometimes seem like priests can live like a men's club life. And I think sometimes they're funneled into that, okay, by fear of liability, fear of being hurt, fear of scandal, or just like maybe if I keep all of my my relationships business, oriented, like there's just no liability, right? And I think that the more priests are kind of like removed from family life and from the vocation of a husband, okay? So having a lot of other like husband friends who are deeply living out their vocation, they can become less and less human. And I like, maybe I'm not describing this well, and JonMarc may need to save me.
Yeah. Well,
but I mean, like you give some observations and then I'll.
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah, I can speak to some of this as well, both because I did attend seminary for a while, and now I have a brother who I've seen through his seminary training and his ordination and now his priesthood, and we meet almost weekly to talk about virtue and our prayer lives and all that. And so I see a lot what's going on with him. We talk about this a lot. And priests oftentimes, they kind of fall between the stools, so to speak, in the sense that we do have this weird world we live in where on the one hand, there's all kinds of, because of the scandals and stuff, there's extra fear and hesitation to be close to people, to be close to families. You have to keep it very businesslike on the one hand. But on the other hand, because of the way our dioceses are set up, because of the priest shortage, just because of the nature, the practical nature of the life of the priest these days, they're pretty lonely. They're pretty cut off. They don't have a lot of fraternity with other guys. It's few and far between. They may have had a lot of good, hopefully they had a lot of good male fraternity, positive, encouraging, virtuous male fraternity in seminary. That doesn't mean that they actually have it at a parish. And so they end up having kind of the worst of both worlds. They're isolated from their friends, from the other men priests who should be building them up and encouraging them on the one hand, but then they're also a little hesitant and maybe they're not able to kind of dig in with friends and people at their parish. And so, as you said, though, it's something really close to my heart because, again, my little brother's a priest now, and I've seen so many good priests in our diocese get burnt out, get lonely, get isolated. We've had priests leave the priesthood lately in our area. And I don't want to see that for him. I want him to continue to growing as a man, as a priest in his prayer life. And we as humans, but I think we as men in particular need that. Men need, on the one hand, other men to challenge them and encourage them and build them up. That's just something that men need. I think even in a different and more specific way than women do. But then, as you said too, I think priests we need to find ways to give them hospitality because they need to remain connected to families. Because families really, again, they're the basic unit of society, and thus they're the basic unit of the church. That's where people come into the world. That's where real life happens, is in the context of the family. And so if priests, just because of the practical goofiness and the fears of our time, if they're kept separate from that the reality of where life really happens, which is in the family, then they're missing out on something. Both something that will inform their teaching and their preaching and their service, but also something that feeds them as a human being, that keeps them, as you said, they're human and whole and entire. And so now we can't just fix that for them. I mean, that they have their life to live and discern and all that, but we can talk about ways that we as a parish, we as individuals, we as families can make ourselves ready to offer priests hospitality, to support them in ways that would be good for them. And that's what we're kind of talking about.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about a parishioner's disposition first, or, the laity's disposition first, because it's like you have this episode that's going to give you a ton of action items, based on priests' own, surveyed what they want. But, you have to become a person who can actually be a source of acquaintanceship comfort to another person, right? So part of what we're really careful to do with our priests, at least like when we offer hospitality, is to really practice a spirit of detachment. They are busy. And I think a lot of people just take that to mean I'm not going to bother them by inviting them over. Like, it must be so stressful to get invited over to people's houses. So I'm just not going to, even worry about that. But when we surveyed priests, that's the exact opposite of what they said. They want to be invited over by families and couples and whatnot, and taken out, with a group of guys, to go get a beer or whatever. Every priest is different. So we're speaking in general terms here, but you do have to have like we've had priests cancel or stuff, because they have a dying parishioner. We've had a priest simply not show up because wires just got crossed. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just kind of like you have to have this detachment, like, oh, if Father makes it to our house within 6 months, like, I'm going to count that a win, and not be, like when they turn you down the first time, or, perhaps offer them lots and lots of dates so that you can pick, and just make sure that they know, like, no pressure, if you end up not being able to make it, it's not a huge deal, kind of thing. So practice that spirit of detachment within yourself, and kind of really make that apparent to them when you do invite them over. But also, like, really pray for God to show you the areas in your life that would make a friendship with you uncomfortable to someone else. Like, no priest wants to be talked to about all the scandals all the time, and if you are a gossipy person, then how is somebody going to want to have a trustworthy relationship with you?
And even if they would want to do that, again, that they're people too, and they have their own vices. And if we want to talk about being hospitable to priests, helping to build them up and support them, we have to make sure that we're being the kind of virtue, as we talk a lot about on this show, has a lot to do with the people you hang out with. I mean, this is the Greeks. Aristotle talked about this. Being around virtuous people helps you to be virtuous. So if you want to be people, if you want to be families that help to build up and support and encourage priests, you need to make sure that you yourself are trying to be virtuous, so that you're not tearing your priests down. They too have their vices. We live in a church that's messy, that's full of scandal, that's full of difficulty, and it's very, very easy for Catholics to get caught up in always focusing on all that nonsense, all that stuff, rather than focusing on the highest things, the ideas, the permanent things, and the practicalities of trying to live a holy life. If you are focusing on all that drama in the middle, well, you might either be putting off a priest who's trying to stay healthily away from that and focus on the important things, or in another case, you may be drawing a priest into an area of vice for him. We need to be people who are trying to be virtuous, so that we can share that with priests, because that's their calling too. And so make sure that you're practicing the virtues of good relationship, in the sense, yes, there's that detachment. There is, being careful with word and speech and the kind of things that you focus on, the curiositas, studiositas kind of a thing. Make sure you're practicing those virtues, so that what you're able to offer them is, in your family, a friendship that is edifying to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes we've had some pretty great questions over the last several years when we invite people over. Like, what are you reading is an awesome question for almost anyone that you have over. Or like for a priest, like, where are you from? Where'd you go to seminary? How many brothers and sisters do you have? Our kids like, what languages do you speak? Because a lot of times priests are really educated and they speak multiple languages. And so that's kind of cool.
What are some of the things you're working on or that are happening in your parish that you're excited about?
Yeah.
Give them a chance to push into the positive stuff, and talk about that. Another thing, Father Peter and I, my brother, we noticed about a year ago on how, we do try to get together and have intentional conversations about our faith life, about our prayer and virtue, or our attempts to grow in virtue. We noticed that in our conversations, as with other conversations, sometimes we would get past the small talk to like the real meat, and we loved that. But sometimes it would be hard to get there, and we sort of called that out once. And we were like, why don't let's make it more of a point to get together and just jump right to it. Let's get together and ask each other, like, what's the Lord doing in your life lately? Like, talk to me. What's going on in your prayer and stuff like that. And so to hear, find respectful ways to invite them to talk about what really got them into this business in the first place. Talk about their ministry. Talk about what they're excited about in their parish. What they're excited about in their the evangelization of their parish.
Yeah. Oh, I lost my train of thought.
Practical stuff.
I was listening so hard to you.
Questions that you ask, you might.
I did want to say,
yeah.
I touched on this just a little bit. That a lot of times people feel like my priests are too busy. Yes, they are busy. Okay, but they do want and need parishioner, hospitality, coming to my house or, joining us at a restaurant or whatnot. But we also have to recognize that, like, if we who believe ourselves to be stable people who are attempting to live out our vocation, okay, we all have flaws, we all have vices and whatnot. But if we're trying and we're intentional, we need to recognize that a lot of times priests do get a lot of invitations from people who do not have boundaries or who want something from them. And so I think it is refreshing probably to be invited to a house with a lot of kids who take up a lot of the conversation and are kind of anticky. And then, you send them away and have a nice adult conversation without an agenda. And all the priests said that, like, don't invite us over with an agenda. To talk to us about this problem that you want solved. One priest said, like, do be honest. If I ask you about the parish, do be honest, but don't invite me there because you want to get on my team alliance, Dwight versus Jim. Like, you don't want to form an alliance or something like that.
Absolutely, I do.
So anyway, okay. So I had a conversation with a amazing older man in ministry who was a Protestant pastor, and he's now Catholic, and he does just a ton of ministry. And he had some really great ideas about men and how men can minister to priests. He said that if you are 10 years senior or 10 years junior of your priests, like somewhere around there, and you've got like another decent group of men about the same age in the parish that you hang out with or whatever, working towards your vocations together, to invite that priest to your small group study or take him out to the pub or pizza place or whatever. If you've got, if you have an athletic priest and he loves running or he loves basketball, offer to get together, or invite him to a bonfire. Your brother loves woodworking and chopping wood. That was like one of his favorite things at seminary. And someone asked me from his parish when he first got, sent to a parish, like, what would he really like? And I'm like, what? It's going to sound really weird, but he really likes to chop wood and he likes to woodwork. So I don't know if anybody, knows anything about that.
Well, and I wanted to comment on that real quick.
Yeah.
We will do a different episode sometime talking more about men and fraternity, their need for fraternity and the kind of fraternity they need with other men. So I won't go too deep in that today, but I just want to say that, but very briefly, men, again, need other men. They need encouragement. They need challenge. They need holistic fraternity. So not just fraternity where it's just about the intellectual or it's just about, reading the Bible. Those things are good. Men need fraternity with men who, in a holistic way, they need to be building stuff together. They need to be training together. They need to be studying together. They need to be praying together. Men need that. Priests are men. Priests need that. So again, I'm going to have another episode. We talk more about that, but you need to be finding ways to build that kind of fraternity for yourself, for the other men in your parish, but also for your priests. You need to build the kind of fraternity that's really going to feed them as men. And so that's exactly as you were saying, build that fraternity so that you can invite priests to it, so they too have a place they can go to be with other men who are pursuing virtue and holiness in their lives.
Yeah, because part of our job of laity is being the stability in your parish, because your priests are going to move, right? And we all have temperaments and whatever that we prefer, but the reality is your priest will go and another priest will come, and that transition time can be really difficult. And so it's to have a stable group of families, a stable group of men that can just offer help. Getting to know the town or whatever. Let's get into these practicals, because now I'm starting to talk about all the practicals, and we're going to get them out of their little boxes. Yeah. I'm a box kind of person.
Stay in the box.
So, invite your priests over. Consider them when you are planning things. But again, always be detached. We have sacraments happen all around the same time at the parish. You know what I mean? So Father's not going to be able to visit all the confirmation parties and all the first communion parties. But it's customary. One priest said, in terms of inviting priests to family gatherings, baptism parties, wedding rehearsals, anniversary celebrations, I suggest sending them a formal invitation like you would send everyone else, or an email is fine. Generally speaking, if someone waits until the day of the gathering and casually mentions it to the priests, he will probably assume, the people will then probably assume that they aren't interested. He isn't interested in coming over because they waited to the last second. So he'll probably have something else on his calendar. So sending an extended invite, a ahead of time invite, is really helpful. But we do, we have a priest that we know who doesn't have any family in this country. And so we leave kind of an open invitation and send a reminder around holidays, you if you don't have anything else going on, you're welcome here. This is our Thanksgiving dinner time with our family, you're welcome to come. Yeah. Just kind of an open holiday invitation reminder. No pressure. Yeah. If you really need a place to eat or whatever, because we actually live kind of close to our parish, so it's a little easier. When inviting priests over to dinner with your family, offer several possible dates. Because A, it shows that you're serious about having him over, and B, it shows you understand that most of his parish commitments are on evenings and weekends. Sadly, some people presume that the priest is not interested in spending time with them if he declines their first invitation. Usually it means there's already booked with something else at that time. Yeah. It's best, and this actually was a response that a lot of people had. The best time to ask a priest about getting together is not right after Mass, when there's a long line of people waiting to greet him. It was suggested, maybe mention to him, we'd love to have you over for dinner. I'll send you an email this week, or I'll leave a phone message at the rectory, but don't try to pop out your schedule and try to figure it out right there.
It's funny. It's true for the ones you've said, and I'm sure some of the other practical advice we'll give, that in some sense, this is all translatable into hospitality with other people too, in the sense that it doesn't mean you never, on the fly invite somebody to dinner, but the point is that you always need to be detached. You want to put yourself at the service of your friends. You don't want it to be a big pressure thing, oh, we couldn't make the date work. Oh, no. It's no, you want it to be a low pressure thing. Those are the families' house whom your family like to go over to, because there's no pressure. That you can go, or that if it doesn't work out, hey, we'll do it some other time. We all kind of need those other families in our lives that we can go and feel like it's a second home, because there's no pressure. It's normal. We've kind of gotten over the hump of just being together. And we know that it'll happen again. And so,
yeah, we don't tend to clean when people come over. I'll clean the bathroom because we've got a lot of kids and only one bathroom. But
we tend to clean. We don't go overboard.
Well, we clean more now that we have a dog.
Well, that's true.
But there were several years where like our dining room also had this like homeschool table. Do you remember that table in the corner?
Yeah.
Where it looked literally like 9 children just got out of school and dumped the contents of their backpacks on this table, and it was just left there. And I never cleaned it. It is possible that that was even there when we had the bishop over, just full of stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, like
and we've talked about that before. It's somewhat strategic that we've resisted the impulse to get too crazy about the cleaning, just because like we need as families to normalize messy hospitality. You know, hospitality that doesn't require a high bar before you actually like get together with people. No, you need to make it stupid easy. Give people lots of dates. Make it easy. Make it very easy for them to reciprocate because they see, oh, this is casual. We're just getting together. We're just sharing life together. This isn't some formal put on. We're not putting on a show for each other. We're just sharing lives together. And that's true too with your priests. I mean, obviously you want to show them respect, you know, and you know, tidy up a little bit and all that, but you don't want to, as we said at the beginning, don't make the perfect the enemy of just getting together and having a meal.
Yeah. So this is just something to keep in mind. This kind of occurred to me a long time ago, but it hasn't occurred to me lately, but a couple of priests mentioned it. We actually used to belong to a church for an order of clergy. And at that particular church, the priest leader decided no priests were allowed to go to anyone's house for dinner at all because there was like favoritism or like accusations of favoritism, you know, like why didn't Father come to my house and why did they come to their? No, I know, but that was the priest's decision. I'm not going to get fussy about it. Sure. But that may be a reality. Like some priests said that like they never reciprocate invitations. Yeah. So they wait for you to make an invitation to come to your house, but they're not going to invite you out to dinner or to a baseball game or, you know. And I get that because they do leave, they invest and then they leave. And, you know, people are like, why doesn't Father come see me anymore when he was at my parish before? So just keep that in mind. I don't like to act based on that information. I would rather act based on hospitality. But there is some
in that situation, again, the backdrop to that situation was that there was obviously people who were jerks, right? There are people who were complaining about things. And so again, the whole point, as you said before, is we need to offer this service to priests. We need to offer them hospitality, but then be detached about it because they have a bazillion people and they're really busy, you know, and they need to find people and families that they can you know, share some meals with, but they need to have the freedom to do that, you know, and so you need to be detached about it and not be, I don't know, what do I want to say? Not be poopy about it, you know, I guess.
Yeah. Not make everybody suffer.
Not make everything about you. This is why we can't have nice things in the church.
Now we do have a priest friend, but I try really hard, like not just your brother, not just you, Peter, Father Peter. But like I try not to like make a deal about it unless it directly comes up, you know? So like, yeah, I mean like, and I think that that's appreciated because then it doesn't put him in an awkward situation with other people. You know what I mean? So that's just something I would to mention. Offering help. So here are the priest's advices. What did Dominic say the other day? He declined a food. Asparagus. My 10-year-old.
That's the Latin.
I was like, do you want any asparagus? And he says, I do not want any asparagus.
We also do the Pomodoro method. And so we you do 1 Pomodoro of schoolwork or 2 Pomodori of your writing homework or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Pomodori or E. I don't know if that's
Italian. E.
Yeah. It's faux Latalian.
They're so funny. Yeah. I felt really smart when I learned how to say multiples of things, or probably around his age, like that. Okay, so I'm going to give my advice first, and then I'll give the priest's advice for offering help. So as a mom, there are still ways that I can offer help to my priests. Like this is a really particular scenario, but I'm just going to tell it because it'll maybe give you an idea. Yeah. So we have a herd share, like a raw milk herd share. Oh, can I say that? Are we going to get canceled? It's legal in my state.
Yes.
We're all legal. With a priest that we live near. And so when I go pick up my milk, I pick up his milk too, because it's like, 15-minute each way drive. And then I'll, send a kid to drop it where he wants it dropped in the church or whatever. And, sometimes he'll reciprocate, or at least he's offered to reciprocate. I don't know if I want to send him with the huge cooler that, we have to do or whatever.
We consume a lot of milk and eggs.
But it's like something that I can do,
right?
To help him. And if so I was trying to think of other hypothetical examples. Like if your priest loves fresh food and fresh vegetables and you're going to a farmer's market, hey, Father, I'm heading down to the farmer's market. Did you want anything? Or like, if you ever want me to pick up something when I go, just let me know and I'll drop it off at the parish office or whatever. And I definitely encourage other families to invite their priests over. So that is something that I can do as a mom, So we have a priest in our diocese who had a meal train set up when he was in quarantine with COVID. And he liked it so much that he set up like this perpetual meal train 1 day a week where people could either bring him a meal or they could invite him over to their house.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I know. That was like, what a great idea. I mean, obviously that was at his impetus. You wouldn't want to impose that on someone, but yeah, it was really
nice.
Yeah. Okay, so this was advice from a priest. One of the most challenging times for a priest is when he moves to a new assignment. Giving him a warm welcome, even when you're sad that your previous priest is leaving, is helpful to your new priest. Reminding him of your names after the first couple months can also be helpful. The first couple weekends are chaotic and usually a blur, so he won't remember much of what you tell him about yourself. I had another priest tell me that like people want the new priest to solve all their problems right away. And he's like, geez, I just got out of seminary and like I'm here and I don't even know where anything is in this city and like I don't know what I'm doing. Like give me a month to settle in. He says, offer to assist with practical needs can also be very helpful when a priest is transitioning to a new assignment. For example, helping him move boxes around the rectory and unpack might be something that an unathletic priest could use assistance with. It can also be helpful to have him over for dinner the first few weeks and make an offer like, I've lived in this town for 10 years and my husband's family has lived here for 30 years, so let us know if you need help finding anything. I'm not very good at reading out loud. Most priests need to find new doctors, barber, dentist, grocery store, pharmacy, bank, etc. It's nice to know who to trust in the town. So that's kind of cool. Retired priests. I forget about retired priests. We did have a retired priest live right down our street until he died, and I didn't even realize it. The priests most in need of practical assistance are probably elderly priests who no longer have a parish assignment. A parish priest can often ask other people, but when a priest lives on his own in senior status, he could have many needs that laypersons can help him with, from lawn work to setting up a new cell phone to going grocery shopping when he can no longer drive. My dad actually was best friends with an elderly priest until he moved towards to family, and he didn't know how to send emails. So my dad would come over and send emails. He would set up the bulletin for him, book his plane tickets and all this other stuff because my dad knew technology and this priest didn't. He would drive him to the airport. I had another priest mention that offering to drive them to the airport is really helpful. Yeah. So food. I want to make sure we this is my favorite. Yeah. Okay. Do you pause? Do you have anything to add?
That one?
No, to all of them. We've said so far.
It's good. I do like the point about the retired priests, right? Because what treasures we have in them. But there's just the practical needs there. I know we have friends in Steubenville that they're planning ahead with a priest that they know to help take care of him, when he's in retired status. We need to think about that for all of our elderly relatives and friends, but our priests too, and that's a good reminder. Thank you.
Yeah, we always have Father Peter in on our thoughts for purchasing our future property.
Right.
Because he's going to, we hope, he'll retire with us and hang out with us, and
or even in between times. We don't have it now, but I'd love, someday to have land where we have a space that whenever he, needs to come get a break and have some time away, that we have a little cabin for him or something like that,
Yeah, I've actually, people have offered priests vacation
their vacation home.
Yeah.
That's what a nice thing to be able to offer.
I'm not in a position.
Yeah.
One time we tried to offer our priest the home behind us whenever he needed it. It's just like a house on the street.
Oh, it's the other
like
family house.
It was like a fail at hospital at like we don't have a beachfront property, but here's this house behind us
right
that we don't even own.
We offer
but
what we got. I know.
You can stay in it.
Anyway, food.
Sorry.
Onward.
Food. Okay, so this was a really fun one to hear all the tips from.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give my tip first, and then I'll get into the priest tips. I have found, and maybe the priests who I give it to don't appreciate this, but they all say they do. So I'm just going to go with it. That like we have a big family and I make a lot of soup. So oftentimes I'll save my old pasta jars and lids, to put like a serving of soup in, and then I take it to the priest if I know I'm going to see a priest within that week or whatever. Like I'll take it to them and they have a can of soup, or like a bottle of homemade soup. So bring food in like single sized servings or frozen. Because if you can't check before, like if you can't check and you're going to give Father a gift, homemade pickles have been a huge hit too. Like we have some ladies in our group who like are always attempting like homemade pickled things, right? And the priests have really enjoyed that in the past. I one time I brought a priest radishes in the confessional. It wasn't. I don't think it was appreciated. So that was a fail. They were fresh from my garden. I was really excited and I wanted to share.
Got these radishes here, Father. You still have to pray the 3 Hail Marys in case there was any question about.
Okay. So the biggest thing that priests mentioned was the flood of sugar that they get at Christmas time.
Yeah, this is good.
Like they can't eat it all. They give it away or it goes to waste. So that was a huge thing.
And I wanted to come in that a little bit too. Like again, we all know this in our own lives that we have a responsibility to take care of our health for the sake of our vocation. I'm to be a healthy, strong man as best as I can in order to be the best husband and father I can be. That's just part of my vocation. That's a struggle. Like we all wrestle with trying to be healthy and trying to make good choices. We know how much harder it is when like we're on different pages with our family or we're always going to events where we're surrounded by junk food. Like we know how hard that is. Imagine being a priest where everybody's like just dumping their cakes and their cookies and their pies and their nut cakes on you all the time. And oh, I'm doing this thing for Father. And so you feel bad rejecting it. But they're people too that have to take care of their health and they need to be encouraged and helped in that. So like, I mean, don't give them tofu because tofu is not healthy. But help them by giving them good. I don't care. I don't give a crap. Help them by giving them good, real, whole food. Like we, again, help them in that vocation. Help them to be healthy. Give them delicious food, but help them to be healthy because then you're contributing to their whole person. Something that's tasty, that is comforting in that way, but that's also going to build them up as a person to be able to continue to live out their vocation. Sorry, yeah, I feel a lot of passion about this topic.
Yeah, I was actually with my dad having a priest as a best friend. My dad would just get like at Christmas time, just like all of this sugar. Right. Because the priest was like a health food nut and
they'd give it to your dad? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, then the pressure is there to them to not let it go to waste because it was homemade and whatnot. So one priest suggested ordinary time cookies.
What does that mean?
Like, don't just give them at Christmas time.
Okay.
Like maybe
like
randomly
spread it out a little bit.
in the year or something. I don't know. But I was on the phone with a friend that we had from college who's now a priest. And I was like, what about gifts, Father? What do you like to get as gifts? And he's like, I
love this one.
Oh, I don't, we have everything we need. And I don't really, but meat.
Meat. That's, if there's one takeaway, buy your priest meat for the freezer so that he can eat healthy. There you go.
Yeah, Father Peter
Good
said
protein.
that like one of the best gifts anyone gave him was like frozen beef.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I could use it anytime. I didn't have to use it then. Like it was frozen and it was just like, thanks.
I started a new ministry called Deers for Frères.
No, that almost went the wrong way.
Yeah, men who go out and hunt and then they fill their priest's freezer with venison. That would be a great ministry,
So this priest said, I like all foods, especially healthy and vegetarian ones. Oh, shoot. Sorry, I got distracted. Some priests enjoy cooking for themselves. Others do not. Most have several days a week when they are too busy to really cook. Dropping off a meal to your priest is usually very welcome, though it can be helpful to check it ahead of time for a convenient day so you don't drop off food when he's out of town or whatnot. Pro tip, most priests receive a lot of baked goods at Christmas. So instead of dropping off Christmas cookies, I suggest some ordinary time cookies at some point before or after the holiday season. This priest said, for me, I'd much prefer dinner over dessert. At Christmas time, for example, I get flooded with cookies, even though I live by myself. And while I appreciate the offer, it's like, how about a pot of chili?
See, there you go. That's right.
Love it.
We've got like a plague going around the world. COVID. Give your priest some good hearty chicken soup. Come on.
Gifts. Okay, so this was consistent. Priests do not need a lot of things. Okay, that was like every response.
This was a good one.
Yeah, and priests don't expect gifts. They don't expect them. Yeah. But this was the overwhelming response, and I was really surprised because I've never thought of this, and it was gas cards.
Huh, that's good.
Because they drive everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they have to get in the car and drive to the hospital and anoint someone. They have to get in the car and drive to, that absolutely never occurred to me. So almost every single priest said gas cards. So restaurant cards are good too, because then they can enjoy a meal out or whatever. Audio book or book gift cards was another one. Meat, we already mentioned that. And not all priests appreciate Starbucks stuff. Specific.
Is that a thing that people give a lot of to priests?
Yeah, because it's like the coffee place. So they're thinking like Father can get a coffee. Yeah. But I don't want to say things negative, but not all priests appreciate the brand of Starbucks stuff. They don't need religious articles. However, that was like a big one, and they can't do anything with them because they were gifts, and so it's kind of like
they just get boxes and boxes.
Yeah.
And they're always
moving.
You had a good one with that one,
yeah. I don't know where I put that one though.
Well, one of the priests had commented that they move a lot, so if they accumulate a lot of these really nice, really thoughtful religious items as gifts, then they feel bad giving them away, and so they just end up with these huge piles of things that they can't ever really use or appreciate, that they have to keep moving from parish to parish. And so
one priest said the older that he gets, the more he appreciates having less stuff, because he just moves and moves and moves. So that's really helpful to keep in mind. They don't tend to need religious articles. However, I do know that priests appreciate stuff brought back from abroad. So I work for a pilgrimage company, and my partner Maggie, CatholicFaithJourneys.com. My partner Maggie is so good about like asking priests what they need when she goes to Rome.
Yeah, what do you need?
Or like Norcia or the Holy Land. She's beginning to know like what priests like what things. And actually, we have a lot of priests in our diocese who want vestments and shirts, like cleric shirts, from a specific place that's kind of in a touristy part of Rome that you would visit anyway. And so she'll come back with her suitcase like full of, and she's the head of a travel company, so she travels all the time. So she'll come back with like the suitcase full of clerics and bring them back for the priest. So I think there is, it might just be nice if you're going on a trip or something and say like, hey, Father, you lived in Italy. You want me to bring you back anything or whatever? Or you good. Love St. Philomena. I'm going to her shrine. Do you want anything? Whatever. And prayers and encouragement. So this was a big one. And again, it's not something that I think about because I'm like, oh, they pray.
We were talking about this yesterday morning, I think. Because and one of the priests, you might read his quote, mentioned it, and I was like, oh yeah, I wrote down a note, and I just fired off an email to my pastor that morning, and he got right back to me saying he really appreciate the word of encouragement. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Aw, I did too.
Maybe you got one from both of us.
No, I think so. I sent it to our vicar.
Nice.
Yeah. So both of our priests got some love based on this. Please remember us in your daily prayers. We're always being bombarded by the attacks of the devil, by stress, by administration, etc. daily prayers, a little note of email encouragement, a simple thank you after Mass, goes a long way in keeping us going and motivated. Priests could use written or spoken words of encouragement and assurance of prayers, also to inquire about their priest's health and spiritual life. Someone else also mentioned like they would love to receive a spiritual bouquet, which is kind of like where
spiritual bouquet?
You ask like a bunch of people, like if you got a family, if you want to do it in your family, you know, you'd ask someone to do like a penance or a prayer for the priest, and then you'd write them all down in a card and give it to him.
I did these things for you.
Yeah, we've done it in our moms groups before, where like we've given a spiritual bouquet to a mom who had a miscarriage or something like that.
Right.
But those, that was on almost every response.
Those are good.
So
go email your priest right now. Tell him he's doing a good job. You're praying for him.
And then pray for him.
And then pray.
Yeah.
And actually pray for him. Don't lie. Don't.
Yeah.
Oh, I've totally been praying for you so much. Yeah. Do it first. Yeah.
I would love to know if you have any other practical tips for giving hospitality to your priest. So put them below, or wherever you put comments on however you're watching this.
Yeah.
I don't understand how the technology works. I just sit in this chair.
Yeah. Yeah, so some good stuff. Thanks for joining us for this episode, this conversation. Again, as we said, we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Again, on this show, what we're doing is we're looking at some of these ordinary aspects of life and saying, what are the opportunities for virtue, for growth and holiness, for service that we're missing, because it's in the ordinary life that God is making us saints if we embrace it, if we allow Him. So thanks again for joining us for this episode. Be sure to check out elevateordinary.com if you'd like to be a patron of the show. Hey, we'll talk to you again next week. God bless.